This is Fat2Fierce. Welcome to the Confidence Chronicles. I'm your host, Amy English. Join me on this empowering adventure towards a healthier relationship with food, body, and self, one delicious bite at a time. Hello there. Welcome to the Confidence Chronicles. I'm your host, Amy English. This is episode number 55. And today we're going to talk about awareness. Awareness as it pertains to emotional eating and how and why awareness is so important when we want to change our habits with food, when we want to change the relationship we have with food, when we just want to stop stress eating. Because here's the thing. When so many people focus on ending emotional eating or trying to stop emotional eating without awareness. So they'll go to the diet or go to the weight loss medication or, try all these different things, but they're not focused on awareness and why these habits with food keep happening, keep reappearing, why they struggle with cravings, why it feels like they have these food voices. Okay. I mean, listen, food noise, food voices are widely talked about now, especially with the introduction of these GLP-1 medications. This is something that people struggle with. No doubt. It is something I struggled with for a very long time. And while I know right now these medications that are out there are incredibly helpful in quieting the food noise, the food voices for people, which is fantastic. I also know, just based on conversations I have with clients and others, that the medications are not designed to permanently quiet those food voices and that food noise. They're not designed to work, to solve that problem, so to speak. So if you have to come off the medication or your insurance no longer covers it, or it's no longer available because it's in such high demand, or you're having surgery, or listen, there's dozens of reasons why you might have to come off of that medication. And this is why when people are coming off the medication, if they haven't resolved the underlying issue or relationship with food, then a lot of times that food noise comes back. Those food voices are coming back, and that's what people are seeing. And they're freaking out. And I get it. I understand, because for so long, you've been able to take a medication and quiet all that noise. And then when you have to come off of it, all that noise comes back with a vengeance. It's kind of like, what the heck? What do I do now? I'm here to share that there is absolutely a way that you can learn to quiet that noise for yourself. And it's going to happen through awareness. Okay. And I get it. Not everybody wants to face the reasons why food became the thing that it is for you now today, why this relationship exists, or how food became such a problem, so to speak. I understand that. I'm not saying this work is easy, okay? But I will tell you that if you are willing to have that awareness, to use awareness in a way that's helpful and supportive for you, then it's going to help alleviate and really shift that relationship with food. Okay. Awareness is a very powerful tool. There's like tons of quotes about awareness. Okay. It is the greatest agent for change, and it is an incredibly powerful tool. No matter what you're trying to change in your life, okay, or what you're trying to overcome, awareness is key. And a lot of that is because it's really hard to change something that you can't see, okay? And awareness is seeing, it's noticing without the judgment. Okay. And that's the piece I really want to hone in on is being able to notice your patterns, see the relationship, see the habit for what it is without the self-criticism, without the nasty, judgment, beating yourself up, all that, without the shoulds, okay? Without the woulda, shoulda, coulda. It's just being able to see it for what it is and realizing that it's okay, okay? Because awareness is number one and then acceptance is number two, right? Because you see it and then you're like, okay, accepting that this is how it is right now doesn't mean it has to stay like that forever, okay? Change is possible, but you got to be able to see it if you want to permanently change it. All right. Whoo, are we ready to dive in or what? Okay. So I want to talk about awareness in two ways today. So I want to talk about awareness for the habit itself, the habit of emotional eating. And then I also want to talk about awareness as you're on your journey. Okay. So like using awareness in two different ways, I guess, is how we're going to boil that down. And listen, I had all these notes for this episode and I got myself so confused with all the notes that I decided to just like put my notes off to the side and I am just going to talk as if, we're having coffee, because if we were having coffee, I wouldn't be sitting here with a whole bunch of notes. Okay. I mean, maybe, but no, probably not. So I got to remember sometimes, like, Amy, just roll with it and trust yourself and just talk about what you want to talk about without having all the notes like I'm a professor in a classroom. Because that's not fun. I mean, maybe for some people it is. Anyway, for me, it's not. I'd rather be at coffee than in a classroom. Bring it in, folks. Let's bring it in. All right. So how and why is awareness helpful when it comes to the habit? Okay, we've talked a little bit about this already. You can't change. It's hard to change what you can't see. All right. And so when it comes to overcoming emotional eating, the way that awareness can be helpful, let me just boil it down this way. All right. And then I'm going to give an example and hopefully it's going to illustrate how awareness is helpful. Again, we're using the definition of awareness as noticing without judgment. Okay. So I'll use myself as an example. Back in the day, when I felt like I had no control over food. Okay. So there would be ice cream in the freezer and I literally could not function, could not do what I needed to do because that ice cream was like burning a hole in my brain. Like I wasn't going to be satisfied until I went and finished up the container. Okay. And yes, there have been times in my life where I've eaten like an entire pint in a sitting, I think one time I ate an entire half gallon in a sitting. It's when I was pregnant with Rebecca and I was so sick afterwards. Okay. It was awful. Anyway, but yes, eating to that point of getting sick, right? I've been there. I get it. And where was I with that? Oh dear, goodness gracious. It's going to be one of those episodes, isn't it? The reason that we want to, oh yeah, okay. So woo! So a lot of times what'll happen is we'll eat that way and then we'll immediately shift into the judgment. Why did I do that? I shouldn't have done that. And we start criticizing ourselves harshly. We're kind of obsessing over the food that we ate, feeling really bad about ourselves. Why can't I stop this? I did it again. All of that. Okay. And when we go from noticing that what we ate, what happened, immediately to shame, criticism, judgment, obsession, okay, we're leaving zero room to make any changes because all of that self-criticism and judgment and all that stuff is just going to be fuel for the cycle to keep going. Okay. It doesn't offer us any space to reflect from a neutral place. And that is where awareness is key. Okay. If you recall, and I know I've mentioned this so many times, if you recall the episode of my very last binge, I think it was episode 7. It is where I talked about the time that I was feverishly eating chocolate chip cookies. And I sat down with a notebook to write about what happened from a neutral space. Okay. It wasn't like why did I do this again? What's wrong with me? It was let me sit down and figure out and go through the steps and figure out what happened here so that I can understand it better. That's awareness. Okay. And that is going to help you break the habits. I mean, it's going to help you break any habit, but we're talking about food here. It's going to help you break the habits that you have with food that you want to change. Okay. That said, what you want to be able to do is practice noticing without the judgment. And so whether that is on your next binge or your next emotional eat, you do as I did and you sit down with a notebook and you kind of trace out the steps of what happened. That's one way of doing it. It's being able to reflect without the chitter chatter, right? Without the negative commentary about what just occurred. Other ways you can do this is by just having awareness when you're about to go eat, okay? When you find yourself standing in front of the pantry or the freezer or the fridge, or you're just noticing you're looking for food, having awareness into that moment and being able to pause, okay? Practice the pause yourself to check in and ask the questions. Am I hungry now? Why am I looking for food if I'm not hungry? And even if I am hungry right now, what kind of food is going to help me feel my best? What is it I want to eat, right? Asking those questions, raising awareness as to, what you're doing in the moment. And when we can do that from a neutral space, there's just no judgment, right? There's none of that negativity. It is just, I often use Dragnet. I'm so dating myself with this one. But do you remember the show Dragnet? For those of you who might be Gen X or older, it's like, just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts. We are collecting just the facts, not the I shouldn't have done that again, or oh, why am I thinking about food again? I shouldn't be thinking about food again. I just ate 20 minutes ago. Okay, no, that's not that we're not interested in that commentary. Just the facts. Oh, I'm looking for food again, or I'm thinking about food again, and I just ate 20 minutes ago. What's going on right now? Is there something that I'm thinking about? Is there something happening? Is there something I'm doing? Or is there a way that I'm feeling that is leading me to think about food right now? What could that be? I'll share with you another story. This just popped up in my head. The brownies. This is from I don't know, 2013, 14-ish. And this is in the early stages of me changing my habits with food, raising awareness onto my habit and patterns. And we had brownies in the kitchen. We had gotten them, I don't know, like the weekend before or something for the kids. And they were really good brownies from one of my favorite places in Buffalo. And I remember I was working, I was in my office. I had my coaching business at the time, or I was in the beginning of it, the early stages. And I was, doing work, and I hung up the phone from a call or something and immediately started thinking about the brownies. I'm like, I just want those brownies. Oh, I want to go get a brownie. A brownie would be so good right now. And when I paused to check in with myself, I realized I wasn't hungry, right? And I knew that if I ate the brownie, I was going to feel like crap afterwards, because that typically happens when I eat processed sugar, especially large quantities, which these brownies were huge. Okay. And so when I was able to pause myself long enough to just check in and ask some questions without judgment, what was going on? Why was I thinking about the brownie? It boiled down to me wanting a break. I wasn't hungry. I just wanted a break. So that was great awareness for me to see how I was using food, specifically the brownie, to offer myself a break. And so, instead of eating the brownie because I decided I didn't want to at that time, I decided to do something else. Now I can't remember. I might have gone for a walk or something else, or maybe journaled or whatever. But I decided I did not want to have that brownie at that time. That example right there And was that the end of my emotional eating days? Well, no, obviously not, because, I have the chocolate chip story from 2017, a few years later. And I think that's another really important piece to take away today, is that overcoming something like emotional eating is not going to be a light switch. Okay. You're just not going to turn it off. There is a process here. And this is where, maybe sometimes people aren't willing to, go through that process. They want the quick fix. They want that light switch. But the problem is the quick fixes that are available today are not intended to work long term. And when you stop them, the habits are going to come back. So if you're willing to allow this to take some time and be patient with yourself and continue to practice, this is all going to help you take your power back so that you're in charge, so that you don't need to rely on something else for the rest of your life. Like, you have that power, you have that ability. You can change it for yourself. And I think that's why having awareness, being willing to make the changes for yourself, that's why I think this is so incredibly important. Obviously, otherwise I wouldn't be doing this work. Okay. So that's having awareness of the habit, of really just paying attention and noticing without judgment what your current habit with food looks like. Okay. And just taking notes. Because here's the other piece of this. The more aware you get of the habit, so the more you see, the more you notice without judgment, as that continues, you are just kind of strengthening your brain to pay attention and see. And as you notice this habit, that alone will start to make the changes. Okay. Because you just get better at pausing and questioning. You just get better at asking yourself the questions, like I did with the brownie, right? Like I did with the chocolate chip cookies. And here's the other thing with the awareness. Even though it's not a light switch and it's just not like an automatic poof, you stopped eating emotionally tomorrow. What starts to happen is that the times that you do overeat, overindulge, binge, all that, they start to grow. It's not as frequent. It's like further apart, right? It's not happening as frequently. And when it does happen, it's not as much food. You're not consuming as much because you're onto yourself. You're seeing it. You're aware of it. And so even when you're in the midst of an emotional eat or a binge eat, you're able to stop yourself much sooner and much easier than you were before. Okay. So that's how awareness works when it comes to the habit. Now, how awareness is helpful and how it works when it comes to the journey is kind of goes with what I just mentioned. It's seeing how this habit is shifting for you over time. It's recognizing all the wins, the small ones, the minor ones, and the larger ones. One of my favorite questions that I love to ask my clients when we're working together one-on-one, and I usually do this periodically throughout our time together, is I'll ask them, when was your last binge? When was your last stress eat? When's the last time you used food to eat emotionally? And in the beginning, they can usually recollect it was last week or maybe it was the day before, right? But as we continue moving on in the coaching program, and I'll ask, hey, when was the last time you had a stress eat? And they just kind of sit there and they look and they're like, oh, you know what? No, it wasn't last week. I don't know. It's been a few weeks. Or when was your last binge? And they can't remember. They can't recall because it's been so many weeks or so many months since that happened. And that is super powerful awareness for them to be able to see like, holy crap, this used to happen every day, or this used to happen several times a week. And now it's been several weeks or several months since the last time I engaged in that behavior of emotional eating or binge eating, right? Super powerful to have that awareness. And so we want to just recognize all the steps along the way, right? Let's say, for example, you would normally eat, I don't know, the entire box of crackers, okay, during like an emotional or binge eat, right? But instead, you're able to stop yourself and maybe you only eat half the package, right? Half the box, whatever. That's a win, okay? Because you're stopping yourself and you're stopping before you normally would, okay? And then you're aware of that. You're like, holy cow, I didn't eat the full box. I only ate half the box. Awareness. Okay. Or another great example is maybe I'm trying to think of something here. Maybe you really want cake. Okay. And you're like, I really, really want cake. But you're like, you check in with yourself and you're like, I know it's going to leave me feeling like crap. I'm going to choose not to have it this time. That choice, awareness. You've chosen not to have it this time. That's awareness. You may choose different next time. It doesn't matter. We take the wins, friends. Okay. We take the wins. And having awareness of all the wins is just super incredible because it helps strengthen your thoughts as you're going through this process. Okay. It helps you start to really focus on what's going well, on what's working, on what's helpful. And that's just going to strengthen that part of your brain, so that you can continue focusing on that stuff as opposed to focusing on what's not working, what's not going well, all that stuff, which that's easier to do, okay? Because we're used to focusing on the negative. I mean, hello. It actually does take effort to focus on the positive or even just the neutral. And again, awareness is going to help you do that. All right? So, awareness is really just a chance for you to offer yourself some space to be able to reflect, to check in, to notice, and see. See what you make a conscious choice in the moment, because that's the other part of this too, okay? I'm kind of jumping all over the place here. Stay with me. A lot of times, emotional eating can feel like it is this, you're on autopilot, right? I mean, how many times I think of this? I have a friend who will say, oh my gosh, like I went to go reach for another peppermint patty and the bag was empty. I don't know what happened. I ate the entire bag of candy without even realizing it. Okay. Hi. That's a form of emotional eating. That's like unconscious eating, right? It's mindless eating. It's just this like mindless munching that you're doing. And a lot of people think that this is just the way they are and that this is what they do and they can't change it. And that's kind of like this autopilot eating, right? It also happens like when you're having a stressful day and you just automatically go to the pantry. It's like you're on autopilot, right? This is just what you do because it has been so ingrained and it's just something that you've done for so long that you just automatically go and do it, okay? Once you start to sprinkle in awareness, and you start catching yourself in these moments and seeing what you're doing, that's when you're able to make the conscious choice. Okay. So instead of being on autopilot, okay, your awareness of doing that, okay, catching yourself in the moment, noticing it, seeing it is going to help you make a conscious choice. You're going to decide whether you really want to finish that entire bag of peppermint patties. Okay. And here's the thing, and this is really, really important. It really doesn't matter. Once you're aware of yourself and you're onto yourself and you're onto your habits and your patterns and you see it and you notice it, when you're stopping to check in, okay, and ask yourself, oh, am I hungry? Do I really want this now? Do I want to eat this? How am I going to feel? All the questions, okay? And you still decide that you're going to eat anyway, okay? You say, yes, I'm aware of what's happening right now. I am choosing to eat this. That's a conscious choice. And that is you taking your power back. That is completely different than being on autopilot. And here's a fun little tidbit. I was going to say a fun little fact, but it's more of an opinion. It's a fun tidbit. Most people, once they're aware and they're onto themselves and they're making the conscious choice, okay, typically don't eat the same amount that they would have eaten before. They may still indulge and they may still decide like, no, I've had a really bad day and I really want to eat this cupcake or whatever, okay? But it's different because you might just eat one cupcake instead of 3 or instead of 6, right? That's the difference. I have so many client stories when I think about it. I'm just recalling a client who used to always go to a donut shop, right? Especially after work. She would always stop at the donut shop and she would get half a dozen donuts and typically eat them on her way home from work. Now, another big piece of this awareness is noticing how we judge others. Okay. So if you're listening to this story and you're judging this person you don't know about getting a half a dozen donuts and eating them on the way home from work, I would just invite you to consider like, what about you're judging? Because that's a mirror. Okay. That's the mirror effect. The way we judge other people is typically like there's something within us that we're judging. All right. Anyway, she would always, she would do this quite often until we brought awareness to it. And I'll never forget, she did not want to tell me about it. She did not want to tell me that she stopped for donuts, picked up a half a dozen and ate them on the way home, but she did. And I was, of course, glad she did. And she ultimately was glad that she did because we were able to raise awareness as to why she was stopping to get that half a dozen donuts, right? And why she was eating them on the way home from work. And it had a lot to do with stress. And so what was an autopilot response of just going to the donut shop and getting the donuts, she was then aware of it. Okay. She was onto herself. She could see what she was doing. And so the next time that idea popped up, she was able to make a conscious choice. Do I really want to stop there or not? Do I really want to eat those donuts? How am I going to feel after? Right? It changed that entire pattern. Okay. And those are the kinds of changes, like those are the lasting changes. This is how, everyone talks about lifestyle change. This is the lifestyle change, friends. Okay. The lifestyle change is not eating clean for 6 weeks and then falling off the wagon and having to find something else to help you do that again. The lifestyle change is being onto your patterns and having the awareness so that these things change permanently. Okay? Because that's what happens when you raise awareness, when you have awareness on your food relationship and your eating patterns, that alone is going to help change them. All right. With that said, I hope that this has been helpful. Be sure to follow this podcast and leave a positive rating if you would, especially on Spotify. They've got the stars there. I would love it if you could leave a rating. And have a great week. See you soon. Are you ready to take control of your eating, embrace your body, and boost your confidence? Then let's get fierce. Start your Fat2Fierce journey today. Go to amyenglishcc.com for more resources and to book your discovery call.